right. Um, Nothing major happening. I mean, as we explained before, working the health service didn't
Yeah.
get too much influx today, so that was really good. And home with the family, and trying not to look at the news, all that kind of crazy rubbish, and just
Oh
keep
yeah.
scripted stuff.
It's not
Uh,
uplifting, is it?
no, I mean, and I'm the kind of person, Mike, really, that not bad is good enough for me.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy on life. Not bad is always good enough. But I think we've got a long way to go to get to not bad. So
I don't even remember not bad.
don't you? Aspiring to not bad. Yeah, yeah. Somebody told me a long time ago, and I adopted it ever since, that the moment they truly become happy with life or content with life is when they realize you're not supposed to be happy all the time. Then you stop striving for it because it doesn't matter. Like it's a feature, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
It is indeed. I think that's a good mindset, really.
Mm.
You need to appreciate good times when they happen, really, rather than expecting them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've kept it. I've kept it ever since, basically. Unless I'm hacked off, and of course, then I forget about that philosophy and say, what is happening? Um, I want to talk to you for ages. Obviously, we've had a few interactions over the years
Yeah.
with your work with BeastWatch UK. I'm always on the page. I'm always looking at all the little sightings of animals, exotic animals. I might be on a loose
It's a
somewhere in the neighborhood.
bit true.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great group. It's a great group, really. It's a great service. So, a lot of people listening won't know what BeastWatch UK is. They won't know what you do there, what the whole ethos of the group is, and how it's made up. So, just tell us a bit about that.
Okay. I've actually got a prop.
Oh yeah,
You
great.
know, I'm aware that I've got a background in cryptozoology,
Yeah,
and a lot of your listeners, viewers, are cryptozoology fans.
sure.
And I just simply have a prop here
Great.
to explain BeastWatch.
Oh wow.
Can you see that?
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I see it.
So essentially, that's an animal trap.
Yeah,
So what I've found over the years is that when you're looking for Dogman or Bigfoot,
yeah,
it's not always at the back of your mind whether you've got big enough for or a dog crate that'll fit in your home. Different ball game.
I
So
yeah,
yeah, I suppose it's out of place animals have always been a bolt on to cryptozoology.
yeah. That's right.
And I can only really talk about them as a myth buster, to be honest with you. In as much as what we found over the years, and BeastWatch originated as a cryptozoology interest group,
Uh-huh.
specifically, of a feline origin,
Yeah, yeah.
shall we say?
Big cats.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
where it came from. Not from me, from its founder member. That's where it came.
yeah,
That's its history. That's where its background. But it became really, really clear over the years that out of place animals were lost pets,
yeah,
or escaped animals.
yeah,
Not necessarily
yeah,
pets, but basically any animal that can be kept in captivity can escape or can be released.
yeah.
Uh, and this, I think I've made some notes actually. That's how professional I am these
Oh,
days.
great.
I think I'm down to 4.
Oh, notes. That's far too organized for this show. Notes.
Yeah, I know. That's the difference, you see. No longer just I have to justify my actions.
Uh, produce
Yeah,
evidence and everything.
yeah. Uh, Basically, animals are either released
Yeah,
or they escape, or you've got natural migration of unusual things that are, rare migrations, which
yeah,
do happen, or you've got the stowaways. The lizards in suitcases or the
yeah,
tarantulas in packs of bananas and stuff. And that's basically out of place animals in a nutshell.
yeah,
Really. If they don't fit into those categories, then you've imagined them.
yeah.
But yeah, so
Pretty hard to argue with that philosophy. That's what you're
I,
supposed to do.
yeah, so we have to be credible. So we have to be
Yeah.
grounded in the practicalities, in the
Yeah.
reality of what we do. So we've developed into an organisation which actually responds to sighting reports with the intention of going out, tracking, searching, catching, recapturing, bringing back into captivity animals that shouldn't be out in the UK countryside,
I
basically.
mean, it's amazing service as well. So when I look at the page, sometimes I see notifications about people who've actually lost animals, have alerted people, alerted BeastWatch UK to, I think the recent one is the raccoon dog is missing again. Is that right? That you have a raccoon
Sorry?
dog. I think so. When I'm looking at BeastWatch UK, I often see alerts about animals that have escaped from pet owners. So there's a raccoon
Yes.
dog on the loose at the moment. There's a few savannah cats wandering about that people are looking for, owners are looking for. So you get a lot of things like that. Pictures of raccoons and maybe wallabies and rheas. There's the rhea that's running about, or an emu running about the place. Here and there. So let's talk about a few of those types of animals. What are the strange large animals that are running about in the UK countryside in ones or twos at the moment, and what other animals like wallabies have starting to establish a population?
It's it's astounding, really,
Yeah.
the variety that we've had. Certainly this year we've had animals crop up like civets and genets that I've never encountered as actual escapes before,
Wow.
or releases. I think in one case the owner wasn't even traced. So they're very unusual animals to be abandoned. We do see trends with animals being abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
A big one last year and continuing is raccoon dogs, tanukis.
Mm.
They're not a huge animal, but they're a noticeably medium-sized mammal. But at the moment, all the birds, the amount of birds is astounding, really. And you're right, there's some pretty big birds as well.
Yeah.
All these closeted emu keepers. They
Yeah.
try and keep that quiet, and suddenly it's running around the village.
Oh God.
Yeah, bizarre. So we do get quite a lot of that stuff. The invasive animal legislation has been responsible for some deliberate releases,
Mm.
and in some ways there's undercurrents of what happened with the Dangerous Wild Animals Act coming into force. And some of the theories about big cats, of course, very, very similar. Some people panicking, jumping the gun, and releasing them. So definitely raccoons and definitely tanukis. We don't tend to get many coatis actually abandoned, which is quite good.
Yeah.
We have dealt with a couple of escapes in recent times, but they're a rarity, to be
People
honest,
hold on to those.
being abandoned. Yeah. So historically, there was supposed to be a couple of populations of wallabies, which was supposed to be wiped out by a harsh winter we had a few years back.
Okay.
But there's evidence that there's some still out there without any owners actually reporting them or looking for them. And that does make you think, there might be surviving populations. Tanukis, of course, they wouldn't be on the Invasive Species Act if they didn't have the ability to survive and procreate in the climate, because they're endemic across mainstream Europe. They're totally unnecessary addition to the invasive species legislation for the UK, in my opinion. But yeah, endemic within mainland Europe. But their origin is through the fur trade, not through the exotic pet trade.
Okay.
As with raccoons, they were a fur trade animal, especially in Germany. And going back to war years, so a lot of that was a result of bombings. A lot of the releases were bombings, even before people had heard of animal rights. So they are established, and they shouldn't be there. Okay, I can't argue with that. And it's debatable the sort of impact they have on the ecosystem. Not really debate that one way or the other.
Are they established throughout the country or just in pockets?
In mainland Europe?
In the UK?
Oh, in the UK, we have no evidence that there's any breeding populations of tanuki yet. But we dealt with possibly around 20 cases last year.
Okay, so that's
and that's continued into this year.
Could you imagine 20 escapes of that same animal, 20 releases? It seems unusual.
A lot of them are quite clearly definite release. I've got a pair at the back of my house at the moment that I actually went out and caught myself as part of a BeastWatch call out.
Oh wow!
And I ended up keeping them as pets. It was a race against time between me and the RSPCA who could get there first.
Oh yeah, I've heard things about the RSPCA that they're not as virtuous as they make out.
They've got, their stance for years has been people shouldn't keep exotic animals.
Okay.
Which is a bit like a police spokesman saying people shouldn't commit crimes. It doesn't help anybody or change the situation or improve anything. I've even volunteered to speak on behalf of the RSPCA when I'm to the media because I know exactly what they're going to say. Save you making 2 phone calls, I'll tell you what they'll say. But it's highly predictable and unhelpful, and it's just like where do you go with that?
I think that's the UK though. I mean, institutionally speaking, and as a nation as well, we're a nation of box tickers. So all of our institutions have to tick the boxes, and that's we can always predict what they're going to say because there's no way they can deviate outside of those lines without incurring some huge liability or some culpability over some incident that may or may not happen. And that's kind of sad. It robs people of their autonomy and ability to think flexibly.
Indeed.
About a changing situation.
I actually think that's the frustrating position a lot of people who work for the RSPCA are in, because there's a lot of good people work for them.
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot of very experienced and very useful inspectors and frontline people actually dealing with the animals. I very rarely criticise those people, but as a philosophy, as an organisation, look at the state of dog and cat keeping in the UK. It's appalling. So bad they have to set up a system of death row, to deal with it. No exotics rescue has to do that. No rescue, no exotic mammal rescue has to operate a death row policy and run like that. And it's bizarre. And reptiles are the 3rd most popular pet in the UK after cats and dogs. If you exclude fish keeping.
I suppose fish would be the next one after that. Let's talk about escaped reptiles then. You must have come across a few strange things. Any big stories? Pythons, anacondas, anything poisonous?
Well, unfortunately, they fall into 2 camps really.
Or venomous, I should say. In fact, shouldn't I? Yeah.
I must state that we don't deal with very many. In fact, it's not worth mentioning. I would go so far as to say we don't deal with DWA animals. In as much as people that have got a DWA license are very responsible people.
Okay.
I have to say that it's one form of legislation which big holes in it, but the principles of it are there for very good purpose, and they seem to serve that purpose. And if people keep venomous snakes, then they are very, very unlikely to be abandoning them. And obviously, they need to have systems in place to make sure they can't.
And they're registered too with the local council. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Monitored by the council and subject to inspection. Yeah. So you need facilities there that don't allow an escape that will result in that animal getting outside. So even if it escapes from its enclosure there's another door, there's another barrier, and it doesn't get straight outside. the legislation is not there to protect the keepers; it's there to protect the public.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
They may get out of their vivarium, they may kill the keeper. This doesn't tend to happen either, I must say. But as far as the legislation set up, but they're trapped within that environment. They can't get out of that environment, whether it be an aquarium or within the home or whatever. So, and obviously, when you're talking about other types of animals like big cats or whatever, the criteria is immense. You're talking zoo standard enclosures, really, and that level of security.
So let's talk about that. That's a good segue actually, because essentially the Dangerous Wild Animals Act 76 and so on, the stipulations about the enclosures. This is the theory that's out there as to why there are possibly big
Yeah,
cats breeding in the British countryside.
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I think you must have had. There must have been quite a large amount of people who kept them as house pets, presumably. And I think everyone's seen the video, black and white videos of the people taking the lion a walk on a lead around London, and
Yeah.
that was put out quite a bit. I don't know how common that was, to be honest with you. I mean, I wasn't engaged in the hobby. I'm not quite that old when it came in. But yeah, there must have been quite a lot of people not keeping them anywhere near what was required of them, for them to consider getting rid of them altogether, and not even have the option of, oh, well, we'll have to have a higher fence or a different grade of mesh on the fence or different locks fitted. It was a case of, oh, we can no longer have it just lying on the couch and sleeping on and going in the back garden.
Do you think it was the prohibitive cost of that venture then of having an enclosure with room to run around plus aircon and drainage and security measures essentially?
And a great deal of space, of course. I mean, even the example of the people who bought the Lion Cub from Harrods and were walking it down the streets. I think they lived in like what would be classed as an apartment or something.
Oh yeah, an apartment. Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't have grounds or anywhere like that for a lion, which is ludicrous on some level, isn't it? So yeah, well, if that's your starting point, then you're stumped for getting a DWUK, aren't you? You've no chance. And of course, there would have also been people breeding. I investigated a big cat sighting local to me in Lancashire, and there was the neighbours of the people who, of the girl who actually had the sighting, and her family. They were aware of somebody local who, during that era, kept and bred big cats in their backyard type of thing. So that was also probably part of the cause of the problem. And like I say, we've seen that reflected with tanukis. In terms of the mystery of the big cats, apart from the amount of them, I don't think it's any different to what's happened with terrapins. The North American freshwater turtles. No different at all. They get too big to handle. They become a nuisance and difficult to keep.
Oh yeah, there's a lake in my town where I grew up in Wales, in Cardiff. That's filled with them.
Yeah, and people just secrete them into the countryside. They'll be okay there, and nobody will notice. And they're all over.
Yeah.
So it does seem a little bit of a bit of a cryptozoological anticlimax, but I don't regard those turtles as being much different for big cats. If there's a jaguar out there,
I think that's the point with people, is their thinking. When something is big, it's hard to imagine that it could be here and we wouldn't see it very often.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at big cats, look at their behaviors. Of course you wouldn't see them. It's a predator. Predators they're elusive animals. They're suspicious animals. They predate. They stay hidden, and it's primarily nocturnal. Or
yeah, they are very
nocturnal, if you like. Yeah.
But I mean, you do also have to take adaptability of an animal into consideration, and the sort of hats that I have to wear at the moment would have me just pointing out that most escaped or abandoned animals will die within the first week or two of release. They haven't got those survival skills.
Yeah.
And a lot of animals like big cats that are kept, certainly any that are being abandoned now, must be being kept illegally.
Yeah.
A lot of those are doctored to make them safe. They're declawed, they have the fangs taken out.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that they're not kept in healthy conditions or anything. They're not going to survive. They're not going to survive and form a breeding population in the UK that they're going to wander about until they get run over. And that's a sad state of.
But those cats in the 70s, I would imagine their condition would have been pristine as au naturel. So surely any cats that we're seeing in this day and age are descendants. They must be descendants.
Have to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Or that somebody has to be releasing them, I suppose. I suppose they, and I knew you'd get me onto this subject because you didn't want to talk about all the time or budgies. But
yeah, we can go into budgies next. We'll do the rose-winged parakeets.
Yeah, well, although I don't admit it, I actually try not to deal with birds.
Really?
I hope no one from BeastWatch is watching this, but yeah, I dread every bird post that goes up.
Are they too flighty? Pardon the pun.
Well, one is finding them, and then two is having a hope in hell of catching them.
They can fly away.
Yeah, and it's a simple, unless it's really tame and it'll come when you fall or come to food or bird of prey that'll come to the glove. You stand very little chance, really. But the thing about the big cats, the main issue for me is the debate about how many's out there.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
I can totally accept that there may be a few about the country, and I tend to fall into the camp of thinking that there are very few with huge territories.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Any sort of resident cat within a smaller territory or female, and males could have territories of like
20 miles,
200 to 300 miles, possibly.
200 to 300.
Yeah, cross counties, and some of the sighting reports that we've tracked over the years would actually track that sort of pattern of migration if it's the same animal.
Yeah, sure.
And of course, there's no way of proving that, but that's only a theory. But what we do, or what we say we'll do, is we investigate sighting reports. And if someone says, "I think I've seen," well, they usually say, "I think I've seen a black panther" or something that's like Labrador, don't they? Then it'll be listed as an unidentified animal, described as feline, possibly exotic feline, something of that nature.
Yeah.
And we don't mind going out and investigating that, because not only is there an animal at risk, because our premise is domesticated animals don't survive in the wild very well, unless certain factors are met and they've got those on the side, but quite often it doesn't. And obviously with big cats there's a public health risk, public safety, which unfortunately puts me at odds with the people that are kind of in the camp of, leave them alone, we don't want to interfere.
I think it's crazy.
If I see one and I know it's there, I won't tell anyone about it, because they'll come and do something.
I have encountered recently from a few big cat groups a lot of heat for saying that I think it's at the stage where the government needs to get involved with a proper investigation, with a specialist team, that is, because they're big predators, and if they're living in our countryside, it doesn't matter that nobody's been attacked. If they are here in any sort of significant number, or even say there's 20 nationwide, let's just say there's only 20. If there are only 20, we need to know they're there. When you're taking your walk, when you're walking with your children, when you're out with your dog in the wild, you at least want to know what's about.
Yeah, I'm not a big cat expert. I don't talk as a big cat expert, but
Yeah,
The
same.
main issue with big cats isn't your young, healthy ones. It's those
The
that are
injured ones.
old, healthy. They tend to predate on humans, and the animals that are mentioned constantly, puma and jaguar and leopard or whatever, are known managers. The natural environment. There's lists of deaths every year from them,
Yeah.
and it's bizarre that people just don't seem to really take that on board.
They haven't hurt anybody. Why do you want to find them and disturb them? And people would just, that's when I like it. People would just go out and shoot them. We're not a nation of gun owners. Some people
No,
do
no,
have guns and
no,
farmers, but
we don't.
if you can't find them already, who's going out to shoot them?
Mm.
It's a weird thing, and I think I understand people. They love animals. They love the fact that something unusual and exotic could be out there. But I often think that those people aren't living in the vicinity of where one of these animals could be.
No,
That's usually what it is. They're living in a nice city sort of place or a local village, and they're not thinking, I might have to encounter a puma or a leopard or a jaguar, probably less likely, out here and negotiate with that animal what our response is between us. And every negotiation between a predator and a human is dependent upon those two individuals every time. A recent video of the chap in the US getting escorted out by a mother, a female cougar. And it was very telling.
yeah.
It was his reaction that stopped him getting killed. Really, the fact that he kept stopping, he kept facing it, he kept shouting. But there were a
And
few
that
points when she was considering,
was
okay, yeah, sorry,
predatory behaviour at all, and it was a relatively small puma.
yeah,
Um, predatory behaviour, you don't even see them coming. That's
yeah,
the idea of predatory behaviour.
yeah,
The silent stalkers. First
yeah,
thing you know about it is they're on your back,
yeah,
and that's also the last thing you know. Um, if they're coming at you like that as
yeah.
a child, then that fella did the right thing. It was also I do hold my hands up, and I do admit to flooding the big cat Facebook groups with the with the post of some
The cougar,
some guy dressed up as a woman
yeah.
going through the um, that was me. Yeah,
I almost reposted and I just thought, don't do it. You're gonna get some heat over this, and you know what?
it was my
Just
alter ego.
just enjoy it, watch it, laugh. You don't need to repost right now. But it was funny. It was the scratch, the cat scratch motion.
Yeah.
He kept doing. Well, I think that kind of thing we need. I just think we need a balanced argument on it. So you've had a few cases recently. There's the RIA that's been running around Staffordshire for the last couple of years. It's still there apparently, by all accounts.
Yeah, it's Wolverhampton area was the last rear
Uh-huh.
report, I think. As far as we know, it's still there.
Okay.
We're in a difficult situation really, because unless we manage to establish contact with what's going on locally very clear and have some very clear lines of communication, it's difficult to keep track of it, especially if you have owners that won't identify themselves and people think, oh, we think it belongs to them, but nobody
Okay.
in touch with them and stuff, and
So
they're a bit
there's the liability fear
they're
again.
cagey. So and then suddenly no more sightings, and you think, I think they've probably just caught it themselves or something and
Okay.
quiet. So it's and we can't keep cases open indefinitely. I know there's been no sightings of that for some time
Yeah,
now.
but I'm sure it flashed up on the picture somewhere recently. Or am I thinking about the emu again? There's
Um,
an emu in
they're
Kent somewhere. Is that right at the moment?
quite possibly. I'm not seeing. We've had.
Or did I dream it? I see
It
so
depends
many
how long
things
ago
coming
you're
through.
talking. There's
No, I
maybe
think this was recent. I'm sure there was
we've got an
another.
ongoing case of a raccoon, and that's
Mm,
shown up again
mm,
just yesterday. And that is an ongoing case that we're dealing with
okay.
offline. Generally speaking, we set up responder groups offline, so the communications about exact locations and things like that are discussed offline. It doesn't mean there's nothing happening.
Sure.
So we're hoping for results on that one very soon. We've got a wallaby in the South Yorkshire area.
Okay.
That seems to have gone off the grid.
Okay.
We were tracking that. We thought we had it in an area that was going to be,
Good camouflage wallabies.
Trapping situation. We had
Yeah.
drones up. We work with other teams like dog search and rescue teams and the drone search and rescue people. They're really, really helpful. And it just seems to have gone off the grid. But again, owners were involved as well, and we didn't have ongoing communication with them. It's really great when the owners are on board.
Yeah.
Working with them, and we've done that as sometimes where the owners leading the team, if you like, and some while we're supplying foot soldiers to help with them. And we've had it where the owners have been part of a team that we've been organising and running ourselves. That's a lot easier when there's an owner involved, especially once you get the pet and it might be a bit bitey, because it's over to them then.
Yeah. Let them take the heat.
At that point, it's your animal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But one of the main issues we face, I mean, even though the cryptozoology in terms of out of place animals has suffered from. I started with this when I was jotting some notes down. You must remember the headlines in the tabloids: piranha found in Thames.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and even at the time, I'm thinking, my mate's got piranhas. Someone's just thrown it in there. Someone's just dumped it. It's not a mystery.
It was dropped on a barge by a seagull, I think.
Or something
it
like
was dead already, so it could have come straight from a fish tank, actually.
It's not a breeding population. No one's at risk.
There was also one in a pond somewhere. I don't know where, but again, it was dead.
And our dealing with the media over the years has often been a constant battle. The major one for us came last year, really, where we took them head on, really, because we got involved in a case where there was a pair of tanukis which were apparently terrorising a village in Nottinghamshire.
Oh, Nottinghamshire,
yeah. And that was international news. It was Sky News, and you had visions of these people like not wanting to come outside, and the reality was most of the village were helping with the search. But it got to the point where the village were thinking of selling souvenirs and T-shirts and stuff based on all the hype that went with them. But the media would have you believe there was pitchforks and burning torches and stuff like that. And
locked in their basements.
But when we went out and actually caught them, they didn't want to know.
Yeah.
That wasn't a big story.
Yeah.
Even though it was like quite a big exercise, and we were really proud of the results.
Yeah, I think when it comes to newspapers, generally speaking, and it's the same with cryptozoology, life and the search in general is it's kind of mundane. It's boring. There are very few exciting points, and that doesn't sell any papers. Nobody's buying that. Tanukis loose in village, locals helping with search. We hope we find them safe and sound. Everyone's well. That's not going to sell any papers, and I think
they would never have thought a lost dog in the same way.
No, I sympathise with them that essentially they've only got hype. It's a world of hype, and they've got to sell that paper somehow. I don't expect anything less from them. If I have very occasionally have dealings with them and do an article or two, I don't expect anything other than it to be completely taken out of context and to make me look like a complete nut job. Basically, that's what I'm expecting to come back.
We try and have a good working relationship. We've managed a couple of occasions, but it's a rarity.
Yeah, there must be. It really must be. Talking about the types of things that have happened with invasive species in the UK. I don't know if you get involved in that at all. People often talk about the invasive deer population or the wild boar coming back and the damage they do to farmlands and local environments. there's also talk about rewilding constantly. Let's bring back wolves and lynx and buffalo. I think they've released some buffalo somewhere in Scotland at the
Yeah,
moment.
it's great, isn't it? We can't cope with badgers and foxes, but we're
Yeah.
totally releasing lynx. Yeah.
Why do you think this is happening, though? Why do you think this rewilding thing, bringing back animals we haven't had for hundreds of years, is happening? Why are we doing it all with the invasive species? Why is it out of hand? Is there just nobody on duty?
I don't know. I can't get a handle on the actual philosophy of it. Really, I
Yeah.
think that confuses me. I mean, land and sort of environmental management in this country is very hit and miss. Anyhow, and let's introduce beavers. Aren't they excellent? Oh, we need to shoot all the beavers because of the flooding.
They're shooting them now.
And it's
Yeah.
like, did know what? Who did you pay to? Who did you pay to put this in place?
Yeah.
Because quite clearly, a lot of people without qualifications could see some of the issues.
Yeah.
And they always blame the animals as well. It's a bit like the TB thing and the badgers. Don't blame poor hygiene on dairy farms. Whatever you do, it's got to be the badgers.
Yeah. It's got to be the badgers. Yeah. Because we all know how much they hang around cows, right? Badgers and cows got to get like bullets and guns, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've never seen a badger near a cow. But
Never actually even seen a badger. All the times I've been out, not once ever.
They are very elusive creatures, aren't
Yeah.
they? Even more elusive than some fantasy creatures, really.
Yeah.
Definitely so. But amazing. I'd love a pet badger if you could have a pet badger. I really...
They're vicious little buggers, aren't they? I mean, th're really
Oh, indeed.
like
Yeah.
having a pit bull, basically.
Yeah.
That you can't train.
I knew someone that had a badger.
Yeah.
He had to move it on because it actually went through all the walls in his house.
Wow.
Actually through the walls. Yeah. So it made its own doors.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, the rewilding thing puzzles me at times, and there seems to be a belief at the moment that we are getting links, and that is definitely happening.
That's coming up constantly, reconsultation every couple of months.
As far as I know, it's not happening.
They say no every time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get the argument, oh, well, they're already here anyhow. And you think...
So why do you need to introduce them?
The same people would have looked into that to some extent. I mean, it just... And I read some really interesting studies which compared it to the concept of rewilding using wolves and putting them in the Highlands of Scotland in the middle of nowhere on a Monday, for example. And they said by Friday afternoon they'll be in London. And that's just the sort of territories they cover.
Oh, really?
One time we had wolves all over the place, didn't there?
Yeah.
And I suppose it would be the territories of packs which kept them in areas. But yeah, in America, obviously they cover hundreds of miles, don't they?
Yeah.
And don't even think twice about it.
But I guess if there were different wolf packs, essentially they would start, like you say, hemming each other into certain areas after a while. But you would still have wolves spreading out across the country,
and that would limit population.
I'm just wondering, they do have very high expectations for this invasive deer population, don't they? As a food source. I mean, I think there's supposed to be about 2 million.
Yeah.
In total. I don't know how they know that. Around about that, so 1.5, 2 million. So
I don't. I to be honest with you, I've been doing this for quite a while, and it puzzles me how people come up with numbers for animals that you hardly see. And I think they're quite biased reports, to be honest with you, because they must be based on areas where the evidence is very easy to collect, where the densities are quite high. And I don't know how they roll that out to...
It's a model, isn't it?
The country. Probably a computer program does it or something, but it's very...
My experience with modelling is it leads to trouble. Don't do modelling.
I've not seen many muntjac. I think I've seen more dead ones as roadkill than anything else. Certainly live ones I haven't seen. They're more prevalent down south. A lot of the stuff is down south.
Yeah.
But I mean, I suppose one thing we are clear about is we're not pest control at all. So we will pull all the stops out to make sure that escaped tanuki don't take up residence or adapt to living wild in the UK. And we literally will, we'll camp out literally and make sure we try and get them, because otherwise this legislation will create the invasive problem that was set up to stop. That's the nonsense behind it, really.
What part of that do you think is pushing people to release them? Is it just similar to the DWA, the stipulations for?
It's often, I have to say that, even though I have to mention that we have exchanged numerous emails with DEFRA, and we were in touch with the Welsh government and stuff when the tanuki was shot. Unnecessarily, and they have softened their stance, and I can't say it's anything to do with anything we've done. I'd like to think, they may have done, even if it's just to stop receiving emails from me.
Could be the emails. Who knows?
Yeah, I'd like to think it helped, but they have allowed for rehoming, basically. Subject to certain criteria, they've allowed rehoming, which wasn't allowed. Obviously, you can't buy and sell stuff that's listed. Can't breed it, and to some extent, I never thought tanukis were a particularly good pet choice. I never wanted tanukis, and I've got 2 of them now. And that just reminds me why I never wanted them, really. They don't make great pets, but they don't make awful pets either. You could get a dog that is dreadful and much worse than a tanuki. Dogs are far more dangerous. No one's ever been killed by a tanuki.
Yeah.
There's a whole list of people being killed by dogs, their own dogs. So, we do need to put it in perspective to some extent. But yeah, thankfully, the stance has softened. So hopefully there'll be less being abandoned, is what I'm hoping for.
That would be a good solve.
Unfortunately, we pick up the tab for that as well, because there's people say, I really need to rehome my 6 tanukis.
Wow.
And you go, well, okay.
6.
Just give us a couple of hours and we'll see what we can do. And so far, up to date, we've helped everyone out. We've sorted every animal out. And our objective is that we won't see a healthy animal euthanized. So whatever that means, we've got a network of sanctuary and rescue places across the country, as well as private keepers.
And you can see that on the page as well. All of the involved players coming in every time there's a notification. I know somebody in this area. I could take one of those for a few days, or whatever. And that's what's really admirable about it as well. The BeastWatch UK page. Everybody on there clearly is a lover of exotic animals, has the time and the ability to help, and is willing to. And it doesn't seem to be that it's funded. They just take on that responsibility.
Well,
they're volunteers.
Everything's about money, isn't it, these days? And we are looking at ways in which we can obviously be funded. We would like some sort of central funding contracts, and that may involve invasive species. We've been in negotiations with along those lines. We're in discussion at governmental level, ministerial level, where our future lies. But we also try and make links with local authorities. We've got service agreements with the emergency services in many counties at the moment. That's a rolling programme. We've got people working their socks off, actually doing this stuff behind the scenes. which is phenomenal, really. And you know, they've brought us on leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. We've really developed as a service, and you know, all credit to them. There's a lot of really, really good people there. It gets frustrating sometimes, you know, we put a call out and nobody responds, or no one's able to respond to something. It does get frustrating, but it's entirely voluntary at the moment.
Yeah.
We are hoping that, you know, one day that'll change, and we do actually have some paid responders, and we're at a point where we're a service that actually employs people.
That's great.
Yeah, so you know we've got big ideas. We want to be, we want to be the go-to option for the people for a specific group. You know, we're not in direct competition with the RSPCA. We'd like a working relationship with the RSPCA where they recognise their limitations, if you like, and the fact that sometimes they get involved with stuff which is just a PR disaster for them. You know, they'd be much better saying, "Oh, these people deal with stuff like that," and pass it on, you know, but they don't like doing that. And that's...
Imagine from their point of view that most of their experiences with domestic animals.
Yeah, most of the time, yeah. As with most vets as well, you know, you get specialist vets, they're worth the weight in gold as well. People that know what they're doing in that sense. It's ironic, quite a lot of the, some of the responders we've got are people like dog catchers, things like that. So you need to think out of the box sometimes. You know, we've got those people that have got hands-on experience, and also are afraid to get involved with exotics. So you know that's really quite a positive thing.
And is it with BeastWatch UK? Is the door still open? Are you still looking for volunteers, or are you always open to volunteers?
All the time we're recruiting. We've had a huge overhaul of our systems, really, and we've got 8 people working as like a management team, part of the committee at the moment, and they're reviewing all the teams we've got. We've got coordinators set up in every county, and their objective is recruitment and fundraising. So that's a huge thing constantly. And of course the Facebook group, you don't need to be a volunteer just to be a member of the Facebook group. But I think you can view it without being a member, but you can't join into the chat or anything without being a member. You do have to answer all the questions and agree to the group rules. It's not difficult, but it's like a first hurdle thing, and the decline. It's surprising.
Well, how many people don't get through? I used to have some funny rules for one of my groups. Like I kind of changed it after a while. But I think sometimes you do want to filter out some of the people coming through just based upon intention and interest, and especially when it's such a specialist group, you do want to know that people have the interest and they're not just going to come on with a kind of a bunch of funny comments and strong opinions and things. And something I do want to ask you about, actually, and you mentioned this earlier, just before we leave, is tracking. Now, I think from a cryptozoology point of view, people who are used to tracking, people who are used to trapping, would have a lot to offer in advice for the cryptozoology community. So is there, before we go, is there one or a couple of things that you think people in all genres, but this genre, especially in cryptozoology, should really know about tracking and about looking for signs? You probably heard of the sticks and the stones that people are always posting on Bigfoot pages, which I always refer to as, if a forest falls if a tree falls in the wood, did Bigfoot push it, or did trees just fall in the woods? They just fall in the woods, obviously. So, what are your little hints for tracking for the uninitiated?
Okay, well, I think you need to, the starting point needs to be know what's supposed to live there and what their tracks look like, and what they look like, because I'm looking at writing an article on misidentification. It's something that fascinates me, to be honest with you. I know tracks can be misidentified, and tracks are a very subjective thing. And basically, I'm fed up of looking at photographs of dog prints to be honest with you.
Yeah. There was one just the other day.
It becomes pointless.
Yeah.
That's a dog. That's a dog. That's a dog. That's a dog. Oh, that's a fox. But to be honest with you, a lot of animals won't leave tracks. And tracking isn't easy. Isn't easy at all. It's not. I'm certainly not an expert in tracking, but we do have some people with a lot of tracking experience, and we also use things like scent dogs, which again are very specific and aren't always successful. Nothing's always successful. So yeah, my advice for that would be to know what's supposed to be there, what the tracks look like first before you jump into conclusions. I mean, we had, even in terms of what animals look like, I don't know if you remember, but it was shared through BeastWatch. Experienced wildlife photographer saw a crocodile, but it may have been an otter. And you go, where do you go with that? Well, at least some parts of that sentence need editing, don't they? Because, I wouldn't say I'm a really experienced wildlife photographer. I can't tell the difference between a crocodile and an otter.
If that's in the headline, I mean, they've basically revealed the outcome of the story right there.
Absolutely, foregone
conclusion. Yeah.
I have to mention it because it was in my notes, but I don't know if you're ever part of it. But I played a part in cryptozoology.com years ago.
Oh no, I wasn't a part of that. No.
Long before Facebook or anything. And it was a really, really different genre to Facebook cryptozoology.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays it's all, I'm a witness. I've had a sighting. Kneel before me and don't dare criticize me.
I mean, nobody seems to feel that they need to offer up any proof, and if you even ask a question, their group members will annihilate you.
I mean, you can even.
They're like survivors. They're like survivors, Mike. You mustn't question them.
Well, it used to be abduction.
It's a very similar temperament.
And I know we both work in mental health. I think understanding of mental health is probably the key to cryptozoology.
I think so too. I think so too.
Yeah, and I'm not, I certainly wouldn't discredit people out of.
Oh no, I mean, and I believe people have come to me as well. I think, sorry to jump in, but I think it's good to have an understanding of how you can be affected by the things you see, and your desires or your emotions, they can affect it. And also, when you definitely do see something, excuse me, you can't qualify how that might affect you emotionally. There's the other side of it, So yeah, definitely.
People are very affected by the sightings. I must admit. I'm lucky. I've got a job that involves me driving around Lancashire at all hours of the night, which is partly by design, I must admit, because I study illusion and misidentification, and I have literally seen a bin liner crawl across the road. It must have either been weighted down because it had water in it or bits of rubbish. Crawl across the road like a quadrupedal creature. Crawl across the road and look absolutely stunning. I've seen a huge black cat sat on a dry stone wall, which if I hadn't pulled in round the other side, I wouldn't have realised was a heifer. Just stood leaning against the wall. A lot of things people see are very, very convincing if you see them for a split second.
From the car, especially.
Absolutely. And they can be very terrifying. But nowadays, I know on cryptozoology.com, people used to write essays, though. Some of the stuff I wrote myself, I'd write an essay, either as a post or as a reply to someone. You'd write something that you could publish. And you think that's really intelligent discussion. These days, Facebook's it's a little bit different to that.
My tolerance is very, very low. So generally on my page, on the One the Beast of Britain page, now you don't even get a warning. If you're just kind of being, it's the tone. It's the tone and the attitude. Not criticism. Criticism's fine. But if people are just coming on and they're being pretty narky and nasty with everybody, I just delete them. They don't even know until the next time they come on. They can't get in. It's just gone. We don't enter the conversation.
Yeah.
With Nessie and Friends, the other page, it's very, very strict. Either you're here to study the subject or you're not. I don't want jokes and memes and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
it's
I
yeah.
remember back in the day, again, cryptozoology.com, I'd been in regular contact with like Dick Rayner or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'd be watching the webcams and not webcams, the
Nessie on the net. Yeah.
Miko's
camera. Yeah. Yeah.
And you'd be chatting, there's people like,
Dick's still active. He's still on all the Facebook pages talking and,
Yeah, I mean, I'm in some groups and I've revisited some of the more bizarre groups. I mean, we've done all-night vigils at Cannock Chase, and I've investigated strange stuff, and I don't mind admitting that strange stuff happens, and some stuff you can't explain. People say, well, you tell me what it was. I don't know what it was. I'm just telling you, we don't live in Narnia.
Yeah.
So it's not all this stuff that you think it is.
Some of it's very hard to justify, and I think my view on it, because of course, really my bottom line view, very similar to yours, is I'm interested in the possibility of undiscovered animals, not interested in paranormal creatures.
Undiscovered animals.
And there's definitely an overlap with some of the types of sightings that come in that appear to be creatures, but people, but seem implausible, like a dogman type thing, werewolf, or whatever you want to call it, or a black shuck, a giant dog that disappears.
Yeah.
Into thin air. That seems to be paranormal, but I do try to approach it from a flesh and blood point of view.
Black shuck were cats, of course,
Yeah. And also, look, I was walking up to Weybridge a few months back. Might have been last summer, actually, I can't remember. Anyway, there's a little patch of forest that goes alongside each side of the town. And it's like that in Surrey. There's all little patches everywhere, but not out in the wilds of the countryside. And I was left the station. I was crossing the road, and I saw a deer. I think it was I don't know what kind of deer. It wasn't a red deer anyway, so it might have been fallow deer. Anyway, I saw a deer there on the edge of the woodland, and I thought, oh gosh, it's a deer. I'll walk towards and have a look at that. It wasn't really big, and I got within 2 feet of it, and it walked into the woods, which weren't thick, and I was behind it, 2 seconds behind it, and I could not see it anywhere.
Well, that's the thing about deer as well. One seems to materialize in front of you. Think, oh, there's a deer, and then
gone.
About a dozen of them.
Yes. Yeah. Expertly camouflaged, but I mean that's just a deer. I couldn't find that. I was wrong. I was on it. I was on the animal before it disappeared. And a big cat, anything else. There's no way you're going to find them. When it comes to the cryptozoology side of things, I think the way I've been trying to describe it to people these days, I said it's kind of modern folklore. That's the way you have to think about it. It's folklore happening in real time. It's anecdotal. It's based primarily upon usually the experience of the witness, and you've got to investigate the plausibility of that. But it's not like somebody describes a big cat to you or an escaped rhea running around somewhere, and you don't have to say, does a rhea exist? Does a big cat exist?
Mm-hmm.
You just have to wonder, did they actually see it?
Yeah.
And is it really there? So it's got that separation. But again,
religious fervor, though, is what drives it.
There's a lot of religious fervor. There's a lot of belief, which is why people get angry because I studied religion for my degree. I don't know, when you insult somebody's religion, they get mad because that's their core, the center. And I think a lot of it comes from we don't really have corporate religion in our societies anymore. So there's that little God-shaped hole they've got, and they can just project it onto things.
Maybe
and Bigfoot's got a lot of that.
But,
projection, religious projection on it.
Certainly, the way Facebook goes, are you a believer or a non-believer? And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm researching it. I just look into it, and I've got an open mind.
Yeah.
But if you want me to actually believe that Dogman thinks you're part of his family,
Yeah.
and lets you run with the pack and hunt with them, or that Bigfoot and his mates all come round to your back garden and you interact with them, yet you still use any tangible evidence, then you're nuts.
It's the ones that have so many experiences and they've got nothing, not a camera, not even a blurry pic. I know. In fact, with the suggestion you just made, I know exactly who you're talking about. By the way, I can name two or three, but there's one specific person that I know that you're talking about now. And for this particular individual, I think if born under different circumstances in a different part of the world, they'd easily be comfortable, this individual, with sending out Bank of Nigeria emails from a internet cafe in Lagos. It's that kind of charlatanry.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's just something that doesn't need a lot of evidence for to research or for one to get involved. I mean, it's not required by the people who are involved in it. It's going to attract a lot of mercenary types to it, and I think that's always the challenge, really.
It does get in the way of serious research.
Yeah.
Although I must admit, over the years, I think I've probably become more cynical in terms of the likelihood of certain cryptids compared to what I had 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It has changed a lot, I must admit. I really just dismiss out of hand now as being, the possibility of an unknown animal compared to maybe what I would have considered a while back.
And look, I'm with you. I think in that respect, and I think cynical's the best way to go forward because there's only surprises in store for you.
Yeah, I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm being wrong.
But for true cryptozoology, they're finding new frogs and mammals and fish all the time, and all types of things. And that's the real cryptozoology that's out there. That's apart from the rock stars, Nessie and Bigfoot and those guys, that stuff is still going on. I love that stuff.
You've got to find them before they become a cryptid, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, I know. That's the point. And most cryptids aren't found by cryptozoologists. That's another eye opener.
Or even seen by them. As witnesses. There's not many cryptozoologists.
I know Bigfoot guys seem to have a lot of witnesses. There's a late monster thing. There tends to be, if you've got somebody like Steve Felton, who's a very nice guy, or Scott Mardis, for instance, they're normally people who've had an experience and then they've sort of solidified them to that location.
Yeah.
What's seen cannot be unseen, and you make a life choice to say, I've got to locate it. And I think that kind of fervor, when you've done 27 years somewhere, well, you've definitely put your money where your mouth is,
Yeah.
But that's not for me. I'm a practical man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I should let you get on and everything, but just before you go, maybe you can just tell people where to find you, how they can get involved, and any way that they can help.
Okay. Well, we're always looking for volunteers from all over the country. Some areas are far more in need of volunteers than others. Check us out on Facebook. You'll find us BeastWatch UK, CIC, exotic animal, lost, found, or sighted. And we've also got a website, www. You'll find us if you put BeastWatch in. That isn't a big issue. We're always after donations as well. If you want to donate to a worthwhile cause, possibly save an animal, then do that too. Yeah, that's really helpful. And we'll carry on the good work on behalf of all the lost and sighted animals in the UK, all the animals that shouldn't be there, even if they're not clear what they are or whether they should exist or not.
Yeah. You're not going to ask them to rehouse a Bigfoot. These are animals that we know are running about the place and need rescuing.
I've taken werewolf reports and I've said, catch pole and dog crate, I'm on my way.
That's very brave. Well, listen, Mike Potts, BeastWatch UK, thank you for coming on. It's been eye-opening. It's been wonderful. I learned a lot. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Night.